All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Difficult Conversations by Supply the Why. A lot of you have been asking, and they're back. By popular demand, we have Dr. Obed Magni and Mike Powell. So let's go ahead and get them up. Gentlemen.
How's it going? Long time no see.
Hey, it's been a while. Obed, what's been new with you, man? What's been going on?
What hasn't been going on? Just doing a lot of work around the country, working with some police organizations. Just gathering the sentiments of police officers and community members, kind of putting it in this document so that national policies in the hopefully not so distant future will be driven by the data that we get from those who are most affected by anything and everything related to law enforcement, and not on conjecture or what we think works or I wonder what people are thinking. It's like, no, we're going to actually sit down, and we've already, in some of the work I've been doing, in conjunction with other organizations, we've been sitting down and doing listening sessions with police officers and community members all over the country. Just, there's a lot of overlap, believe it or not, with what, people want and what the police want. But I could go on and on and on, but we're just out here working on improving the profession.
I love it. That's fantastic. We're going to have to circle back on that. Mike, what's been going on with you, brother?
Same old stuff, just maintaining. I think something's in order. I think a congratulations on your new position as deputy chief, first and foremost. So it's huge, and I'm excited for you. And I also want to touch upon something that Obed just mentioned. I think that's also an incredible task, and I can't wait to see the final outcome.
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate you giving me a little shout out there for that. It's something that I've been working hard towards, and I've, with people like yourselves in my life, and some of the other people I've met, especially over the past year and change, you've really lit a fire under me, and you've really inspired me to reach for heights greater than I thought were possible. And this is certainly part of that. I'm looking forward to the task. There's a lot of great folks over there, and I know we're gonna work together, and we're gonna try to make the department the best it can possibly be. So I'm excited about what's ahead.
Fantastic. Well, you got friends at Malden PD, so anything you need.
All right.
You already know you got support on the West Coast. So
Yo, I can't wait to get out there one of these days and enjoy some of that West Coast weather. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. So before we get any deeper in this, a couple acknowledgments. First, I want to acknowledge all the people, all the lives, all the families that were adversely affected by the events of 9/11 20 years ago. It's crazy to me that it's been that long, but it's time flies, and I just want to acknowledge all the people and all the families that were ruined forever as a result of that madness. Secondly, I also want to acknowledge a former coworker of mine, a friend, a guy. We don't speak very often, but a guy who really just went out of his way to make me feel at home when I transferred to Manchester, New Hampshire PD. To Tom Ouellette and family, I don't know what to say. We love you and we support you. And tomorrow we're gonna be pumping out your GoFundMe links. Poor Tom was in a car accident with a couple of his kids, and he lost his two sons lost their lives in that accident. I can't think of anything crueler for a parent to have to go through than to outlive your children. And like I said, he's just one great man, and I just feel for him, and I just felt the need to shout out the Ouellette family and let you know again we're with you, and we support you, and we're gonna do what we can to try to take even just a little bit of the pressure off from this situation. All right, and finally, I would also like to shout out all of our female law enforcement partners. Today's your day. Today's National Police Woman Day. So for all of you, all the great women that have been on the show, the Bisa Frenches, the Joni Reddicks, the Roseanne Ritchell, and so many more, and all of the women that I've worked with over the years. There's way too many to mention all of you. We appreciate you, and I hope that you enjoy this day because you have earned it through hard work and sacrifice, and it's just great that there's a day to recognize you. Gentlemen, any thoughts on any of that I said? I know it was a lot.
No, I also want to take a minute to recognize all the fantastic women in this profession. We couldn't do it without you. So today's your day.
Yeah, same here. Some of my best partners were female officers. So, yeah, enjoy your day. All
right. So right off the bat, I know that our friend, one of our number one viewers, Erin, she just wants to say, thoughts and prayers to the family. And it's so very hard, the heartache no parent should have to go through. All right. So, gentlemen, let's get into it. 9/11, 20 years ago. So I'm going to start with you, Obed. I'm going to talk about where you were in your life and what do you remember about that day?
From the outset, you talked about how it was 20 years ago. And, yes, and you guys know I'm a big college football fan. And, I'm watching sports yesterday and I'm hearing 20 years. I'm like, there's no way it was 20 years. This was last week. There's no way there are adult children that are walking the earth today that weren't alive when that took place. And, I remember I was working at Eagle Global Logistics in East Boston, right by the airport. And, I'm watching this on TV and it was like so surreal. Like it wasn't real. It was like, this is like a movie, right? That feeling of you have no words. And, you had the one tower, come down and then the other one subsequently going down. And there's something to be said for shock and you literally can't get a word out of your mouth. And all I remember was, and I don't know why this was so vivid for me, but for anybody who's ever been in East Boston, which is by the airport, there's planes taking off and landing all the time and flying all over all the time. I remember it was so eerily quiet. You know what I'm saying? Like when I say eerily quiet, there was nothing moving. And the only thing flying in the sky was like an F-16, because at that point it was all the, flights were grounded and, it was just like, wait a minute, we have this happening at in New York, and then the Pentagon was hit, and it was just like, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? I'm not ready for all this. So, that's just kind of, what I remember. It was just so surreal. And even just talking about it right now, it's like, it still doesn't feel like, did this really, really happen? So many lives were lost, just tragic all around. And, let me just give a shout out to all of the FDNY, firefighters and the police officers who ran towards, that event, just to save as many lives as possible. Everybody was affected, white, black, Protestant, Catholic, Muslim. It didn't matter. It was like that punch in the gut. So that's what it felt like for me.
Well, we're going to circle back to that part of it too when we talk about the aftermath. Mike, what say you?
Yeah, I think Obed hit a lot upon some of the emotions that I was feeling as well. It certainly felt surreal, and I felt this sense of helplessness, particularly as a service member, when you see something like that impacting the place, the country you're from. It mixed up a lot of emotions. Really boil up, and like I said, I felt this feeling, this helpless, just felt helpless being in a different part of the world and seeing the traumatic events unfold. I was at a loss for words, and like I said, it didn't feel real at that moment.
Well, let me echo your sentiments there. So I was 25 when all that happened, and that was before I was in law enforcement. I was doing door-to-door business sales for straight commission, to give you an idea of how I was living. All right. So I was just starting out my sales day. I was in the downtown Boston, Chinatown area, somewhere in there, in those streets. And I had walked into a bar. I think it was called Biff's, something like that. And we're talking, I mean, this is early in the morning. This is 9-something in the morning. And I walk in and I see all these people of different races, like working people, like construction type cats and all that, huddled around the bar. And I'm sitting to myself, I'm like, first of all, it's quiet in here. Why is like nobody's talking nothing? Second of all, I'm like, it's kind of early for all these people that are dressed in work here to be in a bar, huddled around this TV. So I go up to see what's going on, and you see the news about the towers. And now I'm one of these guys. I'm sitting there quiet, glued to this TV, watching what's going on. And then when it was discussed that the planes had taken off from Boston, downtown Boston turned into, it was a madhouse. You see people, it was like something out of a movie. You're seeing people pouring out of buildings, trying to like just running around crazy. People are screaming. There's just a state of utter panic. And everybody's trying to get onto the subway, to get out of the city, because nobody knew what was going to happen next. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I'll never forget that feeling of panic and wondering, like, are we at war? Are we being attacked? Like not knowing what was going on was crazy for me. And I just remember, like Obed alluded to earlier, the days, weeks, months afterwards where the silence was deafening. You didn't see any planes in the sky. Unless they were military, you didn't see, like, people weren't traveling. People were, I don't know. It was strange. That's the bad side. The good side is, and I'm going to ask you guys about this, talk about the unity that came as a result of that. I thought that was, I mean, we can't experience beauty without ugly, right? Obviously that event was ugly, but the beauty of the unity that came afterwards was something that I'll also never forget. So, Mike, can you talk a little bit about that, about your view of the unity that came?
From my experience and what I remember, the beauty that came out of that for me is that American spirit of everybody coming together at that moment and wanting to help. And I mean, you're talking about folks flooding into New York at that particular time just to give aid. And to help out in any way they could, and that was the beautiful thing to me, seeing and hearing those stories. People consoling strangers, strangers hugging strangers. I mean, that part of that ugly period was the beauty for me, and it even goes, once you start hearing the stories about the 4 planes and at each impact, and then you hear about that 4th plane, where the folks on that 4th plane really came together and saved some lives. I mean, it cost them their lives, but I would say that their heroic actions in overtaking that plane and the terrorists on that plane, I mean, they saved a lot of lives, and it could have been a lot worse. So that's the beautiful stuff that I take from this tragedy.
100%. Obed, you want to jump in on this?
You know what, man, Mike, I don't know that I could have said that any better. When we talk about heroes, we talk about, firefighters, police officers, right? We expect, people in the military to be in that category. But the heroes on that flight that, went down in Pennsylvania, these were regular, ordinary citizens who said, you know what? We're going to do what we're going to do to save lives and to right this ship, or, do what we can to, not play victim, but play superhero. And that's what those people did. Yep. And the stories afterwards, right? So you would hear about, somebody who may have been a stockbroker in this one building, or somebody who was a carpenter, over here. And, it was like as if you were talking about everybody who was playing for a particular team. And I know that, Dean and I played, football in the past at UMass Boston, shout out Beacons. But you know what I'm saying? It's like when you talk about this country, and, you know, the different backgrounds. It didn't matter what color you were or your socioeconomic, you know, situations or anything like that. Everybody had one mind, one voice, you know, and that was, I mean, I wish we had more of that today. We desperately need more of that today.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I've ever seen a country so unified than, you know, 20 years ago when that incident took place. So, you know, that's what took place, you know, but the stories of ordinary folks who are heroes, and super ordinary heroes, I should say. So,
well, let me ask you this. All right. So speaking of, we'll stay on the unity front for a little bit. You know, when I have this conversation about 9/11, that is what always comes up, especially when I talk to other first responders like us. And everybody longs for those days again. But I have to ask, what would it take in order to get that kind of unity again? It seems like in order to get that kind of unity, you need some sort of hella catastrophic event to take place. So is that what it's going to take? Because I don't know. I don't know if I'm optimistic that we'll ever have that kind of unity again. It seems like it's almost fashionable for people to be at each other's throats and be at odds with one another. Thus, why this Supply the Why started in the first place. So, Obed, I'll stay with you. What are your thoughts on that? What would it take in order to get that kind of trust and brotherhood and sisterhood back?
Yeah, so there's a lot of exit ramps for that answer. You know, one of them,
like
yeah, you know, hey, I came up with that all on my own.
Okay, talk to me about exit ramps, Obed.
Well, so you've got one exit ramp, for example, right? Politically, you can go back a couple of decades. We were already becoming more and more fractured, right? And then when you talk about, you know, different laws and everybody thinking more of themselves and money becoming more influential in politics, there really isn't, in many respects, an incentive to be more compromising with people who you don't agree with. So there's one avenue. You've got the other avenue of, again, when we're talking about people and everything becoming more polarizing, at the end of the day, we're all people, right? It doesn't matter. Again, you peel back the skin, we're all bleeding underneath. We all got bones and that kind of stuff. But it's easy for people to just kind of like stay in their lanes, right? When you have technology where I can communicate with people and be global and sit right here and not actually have to physically reach out and touch someone, you know what? If I'm an introvert, I think I'm okay with this. So that's another exit ramp, right? Where technology, this world is getting smaller and there aren't as many people interacting with other people and getting to understand them. And I think you actually mentioned something, Chief, in a previous episode specifically, where you talked about this. And I think we were talking about cancel culture. And the premise was, you know, it's easy to be a keyboard tough guy, right?
Yep.
But when you have to talk to somebody in real life, that emotional intelligence, those interpersonal skills, how do you understand someone? How do you disagree with someone without being disagreeable? That's becoming a lost art. So a lot of these things, that's where I mean by a lot of exit ramps. It's like, there's a lot of inter and intra connectedness as to how we got to this point. I don't know that there was one specific thing or one or two specific things that kind of got us to this point.
All right, Obed, let's loop Mike in on this. Mike, jump in on this. And Obed brought up something earlier when he said something like there's not enough incentive in order for people to not be at each other's throats. So touch base upon that, and of course, respond to anything that was said prior.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to take for us, for the country to come together again, like we've seen in the past, and I hope it doesn't take a traumatic event to do that. I think Obed mentioned something, and I keep on going back to it every time we have these conversations. Is we need to figure out how to diffuse emotions. We leak our emotions into everything we do, and I think that really is impacting a lot of things that are going on in the country today. We have too much extremism. We're too extreme right. We're too extreme left. We need folks to get back to the middle, and I think that if we can do that, I think that we can get to a place, a better place. Again, it takes time. This doesn't happen overnight, but I think we need to defuse emotions and get away from the extreme right, extreme left. Let's get back to the middle, because that's where we're going to see a big difference.
All right, I love that, because your blinkers on, and you turn it onto the emotional intelligence highway, and I happen to have an expert right on screen with us. So Mike's talking about, to me, accessing emotional intelligence. Obed, so I want you to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence to us regular folks, us non-doctors. And secondly, I want you to touch base upon what are the advantages about compromise and being willing to meet somebody in the middle.
Oh man, how much time we got? Whew. All right, so emotional intelligence, the Reader's Digest version of the definition is recognizing and managing your emotions while recognizing and managing the emotions of others. Now, I have a lot of people who I'm friends with who I disagree with on everything, but you wouldn't know it, because if you ever see us interacting, we're cool. That's what we want, right? Whether it's in this country, whether you're on a SWAT team or a basketball team, I mean, we all know there's always going to be conflict, right? But again, going back to the phrase of disagreeing without being disagreeable, there's some people who I work with, the only thing we agree on is, I don't know, what color mask. Okay, this mask is probably ideal. And then that's it. But when you look at it we'll use law enforcement as an example, right? Officer safety. If you're able to reach people at their level, right, wherever they're at, and you can diffuse them, like Mike was saying, like, okay, they're angry about something, but you recognize the fact that they're not just being angry to be Adam Henry. I don't know if I need to go into the definition of that, but do you know what I'm saying? If you understand that, hey, maybe this person had just lost a loved one and they're just reacting and they don't know how to express themselves, that gives you a better sense of, okay, how I need to approach this person, or you can appreciate where they're coming from, but approaching them from a perspective where, hey, I see you, I understand what you're going through and I'm here to listen. That's going to carry a long ways versus hey, I'm just going to show up and you're going to do what I tell you to do, and so on and so forth. So whether it's managing a conflict in the streets, managing a conflict in the office, managing something with your family, we all know how it is when people get together on Thanksgiving, right? It's how can we, like Mike eloquently so put, meet in the middle and not get sent to one side of the fringe or the other side? Because at the end of the day, it's all going to be in the middle. That's where the compromise, that's where the sweet spot is.
All right. I also happen to have an expert in Hey, I See You. Mike, as a community policing expert, Mike, that's your big thing, right? Like, hey, I'm not Sergeant Powell. I'm just call me Mike. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly that is a level of, hey, I see you. So talk about that and how that's worked in your world and how you think other people can adopt some of that.
Yeah, no, I think that it's being able to relate to folks, because again, we are from the community. We're from the communities that we serve, so we're no different than anyone else that we happen to find ourselves helping on that particular day at that particular time. So I think getting people to understand that that we see them as people, and we don't, when we're doing our jobs, we're not doing it as hey, I'm the authority, you must listen to me. This is an equal partnership, and I think that folks have to understand that, and not only community but law enforcement, is that this is a partnership. We can't do it without the community, and the community cannot do it without us. And again, that's coming back to the middle, and it's policing your community in a way in which which permeates the idea of, hey, we're in this is our community also. We just happen to be paid full time to make sure that the safety and tranquility is kind of maintained. That's all it is. And I think if we can get back to that place where it's not us versus them and it's us, it's a partnership, we'll be in a lot better place than we are now. But I think things are starting to kind of, not, I don't want to say level out, but I think some of the emotions we've kind of diffused a lot of the emotions right now, and now we're trying to figure out where we go from here.
All right, perfect time to jump to Obed. Do you agree with Mike? Are you seeing the emotions leveling out, or are you still seeing people that are hot and they're just refusing to even have these conversations with people that oppose them?
Let me see if I can use this phrase. Perception is reality, right?
All right.
So this is no knock on the media, but we do know that the media plays a huge role in how sentiments are seen in this country. So we know that there's still work to be done to improve community police relations, right? Nobody's going to disagree with that. Obviously the incident that took place in Minneapolis kind of just set this powder keg, just blew everything up. But now that we've gotten past that, and to Mike's point, what are we doing to improve and make things better? For those who don't know in the audience, I'm one of the co-founders and board members of the American Society of Evidence-Based Policing. And we had a conference 2 weeks ago in South Carolina. We socially distanced, we wore a mask. Joe, don't better be freaking out or anything. But in all the presentations, everything that's talked about is always solutions first. So you've got people working all over this country, actually globally, working on improving issues and things in policing. Let's use one example. You guys probably remember when the civil unrest started taking place, there were some city councils who were real quick to, okay, we're just going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to take this away, we're going to defund it. And they ended up doing more harm than good. And now they're having somewhat of that buyer's remorse. I'm using air quotes because now they're like, hey, we need to.
Obed, can you provide a specific example?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Seattle. Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll use Seattle as one example.
Okay.
So Seattle is now having a crisis with hiring police officers. And one of the things I said back then when it took place, and this is what the evidence-based community has been saying, is you can't make policy decisions. You can't make decisions at a governmental level that's going to affect all stakeholders with a knee-jerk reaction. Because when you use a knee-jerk reaction, you're going to do more harm than good. Bringing it back full circle to where Mike's coming from, a lot of municipalities kind of saw what some of these governmental agencies did. They were like, yeah, we don't want to go that route. So thank you for being the guinea pig for us. We're going to use a different tactic to fix our problems. Again, I'm using air quotes. And that's what we're seeing right now. I don't know that I've ever seen I don't think I've seen as much publicity, and I don't know if that's the right word, on a lot of these community organizations, whether it's evidence-based policing, whether it's community grassroots efforts to help bridge that community police relations stuff. So I think that's what we're seeing. There's more of an acceptance of it, or I guess you could say not commercialization. That was the word I'm thinking of. Commercial is the best I got, but I think it's more of an accepting mainstream. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's mainstream. There's more mainstreaming of it, especially from the policing side, with a lot of innovative programs. So,
Mike, what do you think about this? Are the knee-jerk reactions starting to, like as Obed said, have create some buyer's remorse? And if so, how can we fix that?
Well, I think Obed made a great point. I think folks are starting to see the effect of some of the decisions that were made from all in different parts of the country, and they don't want that for their communities. So I think that, and again, I think some of the decisions were based on not only knee-jerk reactions but extremism. Some of those decisions were extreme, and when you make decisions and they're extreme, they have horrible consequences. And I think that's what we're seeing. That's what folks are seeing across the country. And again, we're not fixed. We're not out of hot water. But I think that what we're focused on more now is what is reasonable for everybody across the board, and not just as a result of these kind of emotionally made decisions that we've seen people making.
Go ahead, Obed.
If I could just throw one small, minute thing. One of the people who testified in the Chauvin trial a couple months ago, when you have an expert on the stand, okay, so tell me about your qualifications and what makes you an expert in this field to talk about whatever. One of the expert witnesses touted the fact that, hey, I'm a member of the American Society of Evidence-Based Policing. Yes, I'm gonna pop a collar real quick, but the point is that in a high-profile case like that, do you see what I'm saying? There was an emphasis on, hey, research, and I'm not saying that's the panacea. I'm not saying that everything has to be evidence-based policing and that's that. No, but I'm saying it's got to be a strong foundation. You know what I'm saying? And it's important. So to Mike's point, hey, instead of a hastily decision, we're just gonna do this because we gotta do something. It's like, okay, well, what makes sense? Is there any research or literature that supports it to make sense? If it's never been done before and what we're doing is new, are we inviting researchers and other people to study it to see, hey, as we go forward with this, are we doing more harm than good? Or vice versa, where are we going well? Where's it falling short? That's what the conversation is supposed to sound like. That's what's supposed to take place, taking everything into account and not excluding one group or another group or anything like that. Because that's how we get into this mess in the first place.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to jump in really quick. As far as group exclusion, does that now create yet another issue where, let's face it, I think there's more little fiefdoms and factions now than there's ever been. How do you include everybody? How do you get everybody a seat at the table? At some point, it's like the club. Obed, you and I also, when we played football, what else did we do? We were bouncers, right? Remember, we were bouncers. We bounced at a club. At some point,
At some point, you were going to say we went clubbing.
Well, at some point we were bouncers. At some point, you reach capacity. You can only get so many people in that club.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure everybody is heard and everybody gets a seat at the table when there's only so much time? Because there is a point in time where it becomes paralysis by analysis, and you have everybody wanting to think about it, and everybody wants to have their say, all the while the world's still going on and nothing's getting solved. So how do you address that?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Doctor. You go.
No. I defer.
All right, Mike. You go.
And so what I was going to suggest, it's really, to me, this is my opinion, it's really, really simple and easy, right? So we're throwing a lot of titles and a lot of groups, and like you said, it's faction. It's all over the place. And essentially, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. Like we literally all want the same thing, to be treated fairly, all that good stuff, all those good words that we're using. We all want the same thing. And I think that regardless of what group you're in or what the title of your group is, or listen, at the end of the day, we're all fighting for the same thing. So why do we have to continuously throw a title here, a title there, a group there? And I think that if folks can just really think about that, it really is that simple. It really is that simple.
So we've talked about that before in the past too. If we broke things down, if we broke life down to the lowest common denominator, right? And we just lived by the rules that we all went by in kindergarten. Treat others fairly. Share when you have the ability to share. Don't put your hands on people. You know what I mean? All these simple rules. I know it sounds crazy, but wouldn't we be better off? Like somewhere along the lines, we went and complicated all these simple rules that we went by, and we started adding all these sometimes why caveats to all these things. Like, share when you can share, except for when it doesn't benefit you, and then it does this, and if it meets your political this or that. So I don't know. I don't know how to fix it and still get everybody heard. I'm not sure it's possible.
I was going to say, how do you remember what you did in kindergarten? Because I don't remember anything in kindergarten, man. I'm about to drink some more Ensure or something. I can't be getting this old. But you know what, though? Here's the thing. We're already doing it, right? Chief, you're already modeling that behavior. LT, you're modeling that behavior. There are other people they're already showing and already leading in the front. And we got to do more to highlight those people. And I think the advantage, believe it or not, is, with the advancement of social media, it's easy to see, oh man, Chief Jenkins is out here doing what? Oh, we need to find out what's going on out here. Future Chief Powell is he's a community person. So the more we see this, the more no longer becomes a, anomaly. And that's why I was going with the original word of mainstreaming. Not that we didn't know that people were doing a lot of work in the communities before, but now you could just go on Instagram, Twitter. I don't have a TikTok, but you can go on TikTok and you can see, a lot of the things that's going on. Again, it's just like anything in life, man. It's going to take time and it's not going to happen overnight. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we want that 100-yard sprint, but this is going to be a 1,500. So.
Mike, do you want to respond? Because I want to hit the chat real quick. I have an interesting comment in the chat that I think we should address.
No, sir. All you.
All right, let's hit the chat. So Maureen Gibbons, a.k.a. Mrs. Gibbons to me, not Maureen. She is Mrs. Gibbons. That's her first name. Doesn't the media amplify extreme ideology, repetition, point of view, manipulative narrative? So we have talked about this quite a bit. What's the media's role in all this, and how much responsibility should they bear for helping to create some of this division by some of their sky is falling reporting that they do? Obed, you seem to want in.
Please let me have this. I have intimate, how shall I say, experiences with this. And I'm going to take this back a decade. So I used to be on our union board back in 2007 to 2010. And this is when the economic collapse, and Mrs. Gibbons, I apologize if it sounds like I'm being long-winded. I'm not. I promise you I'm just setting it up for you. During the economic collapse, obviously the sky was falling, right? And one of the things that was taking place that we've never seen in policing before was the sacred cow pensions and everything else was being taken away and being modified. You had public safety officials being laid off and so on and so forth. Now, we're not saying all of the media, we're just saying in some corners of the media circles, what did you always see, that was going on? Hey, these officers are retiring and making $400,000 in retirement. They're making more retirement than they would. And then and again, I'm just going to speak about California. I'm just talking about California only. So that was a huge narrative that was going on. Now, obviously, that was definitely not the case. And there were some people who were very, very upset and incensed about it. And so one of the lessons was we have to understand the media is a business. And the purpose of all businesses is to make a profit and it's to make money. And we know that sensationalism, however true or not true, that's what sells. That's what gets viewers in front of the TV, newspapers, whatever it is, and that's where the money's going to come in. So I'm not here saying what they're doing is right or what they're doing is wrong. It's more of you've got to understand, and I'm not saying that you don't know this, Mrs. Gibbons, I'm just putting this out there, but there has to be an understanding that the media's interests are not always going to be aligned with the truth or what's factual or what, the interest of justice and so on and so forth. So that it's kind of like the cost of doing business. This is to be expected in some respects.
All right, let me break to Mike on this. Mike, with that in mind, should there be some rules, some parameters where what's being reported and what's being put out has to have some sort of factual something or other? It seems like what's happening is they're kind of cherry picking pieces of stories and picking out the parts that's guaranteed to have the highest amount of shock value.
Yeah, no, I think that there definitely needs to be more accountability when it comes to journalism, particularly related to the media. I think that, I think they have a duty to tell the story, but make sure it's accurate. And instead of competing for who's going to get the most ratings or the most viewers, just tell the story. And I think it's unfortunate that that money, the high dollar kind of dictates who tells the story. Who holds the purse makes the decision. So I think ultimately it's not neutral, because you're always going to have, depending upon what outlet you're looking to for your source of news, you're always going to, folks who control that particular business their ideologies, their thought process, their feelings, that's coming into the mix. So ultimately, at the end of the day, you may want to tell the story and it's the truth, nothing but the truth. But guess what? You have a boss who thinks otherwise, and so I think that seeps into a lot of the media that we see today, and it's unfortunate. And I think that needs to be addressed, and there should be more accountability.
And just to clarify again, this is not all members of the media. We don't here on Difficult Conversations. We don't have blanket statements. All right. So just everybody know this. So, because we all know, I mean, I've actually had a member of the media that was a panelist on one of the shows, and I find him to be very fair and very down the middle and kind of just calling balls and strikes. So it's important that you know that this is not everybody, just like our opinions are our own. Like, like my opinion has nothing to do with my day job. This is my opinion. Same with Obed, same with Mike. All right. So just need to throw that out there for those of you that are might be trying to do a little predatory listening here, looking to pull the pieces of this conversation out to start a fire someplace else.
Yeah, and thank you, because that's important, Dean. So thank you.
Yeah. And I know some people in the media, and same thing, fair, down the middle. They don't pull no punches or anything like that. It's it's just unfortunate, just like in policing, right? One or two people, they screw up or they do something bad, and then it just tarnishes everybody else, in the profession. So, yeah,
100%. So at some point, and again, we've talked about this in past shows, and we're going to keep talking about it because it's important. At some point, we have to get past the practice of painting with a broad brush, like we just talked about, like the media example, for example. How I said we are not doing that. We were just saying that there is a large faction of people or groups that do that. And to Obed's point, like, for example, when the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin incident happened, I work 1,000 miles away from there. And I'm answering questions for something about a department that I have no knowledge of, an officer I have no knowledge of. I don't know how they train. I don't know when they train, how frequently they train, and people want to hold me responsible for that. So at some point, Obed, how can we help people remember that nobody likes to be lumped into one pot like that? Like, for example, I talked about it before, like Jeffrey Dahmer worked in the candy business at some point. But I guarantee you, everybody that's out there that's watches enjoys a Snickers or a Butterfinger every once in a while. Like, you didn't, you know what I mean? You don't stop eating candy or some M&Ms because one person from one industry has some bad in them. So how do we get people to understand that and see the wisdom of what we're talking about here?
So that's a really good question, and this is one of the I don't want to say the word dilemma. One of the hurdles in policing and improving policing, right? So you've got 18,000 police departments. That's doing 18,000 different things and 18,000 different policies, different training standards. You have some states with post, some states no post. You got states that have decertification processes. You've got, like California, there is no such thing as a decertification process. And unfortunately, when you think about proximity, right? We talk about this blue line, and everybody bleeds blue. That's in the profession, everything. So the members of the public are like, okay, well, everybody's blue, so that means whatever's happening in Boston must be happening in Phoenix, or whatever happening in Sacramento, it must be going on in Miami, or what's going on in some rural, sheriff's department in Arkansas, they must be doing the same thing in Detroit, Michigan. And we all know that's not the case, right? We know that, and there is, obviously there are some skeletons in the closet as we talk about American policing in the past and all that kind of stuff. But
no question about it.
Right. So again, moving forward, and I don't know if it's the moving forward part. The best thing that we can do, and I know that we're doing it here, is we're putting that best foot forward. We're putting that. Hey, not officers are like this. Yes, we know that the next person over here, when the next incident takes place, we know that, hey, you know what? They all must be like this. And we know that it's not the case. In fact, during the listening session that I did a couple months ago, that was one of the biggest things that the officers expressed frustrations with. I remember one officer talking about like, hey, I just come to work every day, just want to take care of my family. I love where I work and I take care of the people. And I go over here and I'm getting called this, that, and the third. This is like, I'm here to help you. You know what I'm saying? And having to navigate that, especially when you're working a protest line. You got people in your face calling you all kinds of names and your parents and your family, all kinds of stuff. And you're just like, do you not know that I volunteer my time, at the local, whether it's a homeless shelter or something like that. I go above and beyond, you know what I mean? But people don't see that. They see the uniform, and it's a branding problem. So, again, bringing it back to, I'm just going to steal it from my boy, Dr. Gould, who did this presentation last week. He had a slide. This hit me in the face. But he had a slide up and he had these logos on there like Starbucks, McDonald's, Taco Bell, all that kind of stuff, Ace Hardware. And then he had a patch, a police patch. And the people in the class were, favorable, even though we know McDonald's, no shade to McDonald's, but you're probably killing more people than you think. But, it's just when you look at the brands, people have favorable opinions about these brands, right? But then when it came to the police patch, it automatically had a negative connotation. And I was like, if that's not powerful, I don't know what is. So how do you go from a public safety perspective? You're here to serve and protect. You're here to help. And that is dirty compared to all of these other brands. Again, no shade to McDonald's, just so we all know, they got the best fries in the history of mankind. So I'll just say.
All right, so let's loop Mike in on that. So Mike, how do you change that? I mean, as far as the branding issue that Obed's talking about, and you as a supervisor too, you must see it. You must have people that work for you, and they're just throwing their hands up. They're like, I don't know what more I can do. Like, I come to work, I treat people right, I get my paperwork in on time, I do all the right things, and it's still not good enough. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, I want to say this, that I think the majority of the folks in this country do support law enforcement. And again, I think that we get this sense that we're not being supported because of some of the things that we're seeing on the media, social media sites, what have you. But speaking in particular to my community, I get more thank yous during the course of my day, then I hate you. I really get a I hate you, and I can't even count how many times I get I appreciate you guys, I appreciate you girls. So I wanted to point that out, and particularly so that folks that are wearing the uniform or wearing a badge don't get discouraged, because the majority of folks in this country, they are for law and order, law enforcement. Unfortunately, I think, again, it's based upon what we're seeing on TV, and everyone has a phone and all that good stuff. But I don't want folks to forget that. But to Obed's point, some of the things he made is how you prevent getting painted with a broad brush. And I think the best way to do that is what we've continued to do, or what we're doing better, is just being transparent. And I think that right now body cams are kind of helping with that situation. A lot of departments are continuing to improve with as far as transparency, and a part of that is with technology, and that consists of body cams. So I think that piece of technology is going to help us across the country be a little more transparent, and hopefully that kind of levels out or mitigates being painted with a broad brush. And we have different standards all across the country, like Dr. Magni alluded to. Different standard, different policies, different laws. There is no standard when it comes to law enforcement across the country, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now.
All right, so we're almost at the 10-minute mark. So really quick, in about 90 seconds or less, I'm going to ask you again something that we've talked about in the past, but I think it's important. Do you think it would be helpful if we had more unified national standards? Obed.
Short answer, yes. And I say short answer because one thing that we policing is going to be different in every community, right? So if you got a community like Fort Myers, which is more of a retirement community, policing there is going to be drastically different than maybe policing in Los Angeles. When it comes to training, if we don't have anything that we can all point to, right, then what's going to happen is we're going to get more of the same. This agency over here in this part of the country, they're allowed to do X, Y, and Z, which everybody else might find abhorrent, but because they do it, well, then you guys must be doing it too. Case in point, the chokehold, right?
Yep.
Where it's really a carotid. So you got one incident that takes place. It's like, well, it's okay for us to do it. Now you got states banning it altogether, outright, period. And we're like, well, like to your point, Chief, well, we don't do that, but now you're taking something away from us that we don't even use. But what happens if there's a life or death situation? So that complicates things. And one of the ways you can decomplicate that is by having some uniform standards when it comes to training.
Mike, great answer, Obed. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Obed. I think it all depends because each community really is different. The way we police in certain communities across the country, it's very different. Mm-hmm. Some communities, want something totally different from what on the East Coast may be different from the West Coast. So I think, I think that a lot of things could be standardized, but you have to leave some room for community standards, for lack of a better term. So I think there needs to be some wiggle room. I don't think every single thing needs to be the same across the country, but I think that if we can standardize a lot of the big issues that we're seeing, I think we may be in a better place.
All right. I love that. Gentlemen, we're about 8 minutes out. So let's talk about what do we got going on positive? What are our shout outs? So Obed, what are your shout outs? What do you got going positive? And I saw something you posted on Instagram the other day about books you've read. So what are we recommending? What are we reading?
All right. So the book that I'm currently reading right now is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And this is the updated version. Heavy. It's heavy. I actually have to listen to it as an audiobook in the gym because there's just some things in that book. I'm just like, all right, I got to make sure I throw some weights around because, shout out number one to, Chief Jenkins on his, his new promotion.
Deputy Chief. The chief is.
We're gonna still call him Chief. Okay, thank you.
But either way, thank you. I appreciate it, man.
Because it's important that men like yourself, men and women, doesn't matter what gender, people whose hearts are in the right place, minds are in the right place, family men. This transcends policing, but we need to see those good role models in those high-profile, positions, so that others can aspire and have something to shoot for. To look forward to, maybe being or even surpassing someday. And so if you're not there, then somebody can't aspire for that. So I just want to give you, Chief, that shout out. Obviously, shout out to all the police women out there. I'm going to be in Nashville this week doing some more listening sessions with some of the community members and police officers there. Still working on some evidence-based policing stuff. I just found out that I have a second article, peer support article that's going to be up for publication, I think in the next month, and that's to do with COVID-19 and morale here in California with police officers here. So that's just a little bit. If I kept going, we'd be here till like 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So
that's amazing, Obed. Keep grinding, brother. It's an inspiration to us all. It really is.
Thank you,
Mike. What's going on with you?
Same old stuff with me. I'm just continuing to try to put law enforcement in a positive light, and I Obed said something that resonated with me. I think I think we need to really focus on putting folks in positions that are just good people, regardless of whether you're male or female, just good people with good hearts in some of these positions. and again, we'll just continue to get better and better. But my focus has been just to continue to try to put law enforcement in a positive light, bring a different element to our law enforcement, which is the mental health component, trying to incorporate that with law enforcement. And because I don't have to, I'm preaching to the choir, but mental health, I think is a big issue right now, and I think we need to control it a lot better than we have been, and kind of shed some light or shine some light on mental health issue in this country, and that's kind of what my goal is.
And I appreciate that. Can you just give us a little piece, Mike, as to how you're looking to accomplish that, if you can discuss any of that?
Yeah, so right now we're working with the Elliott Community. It's a family organization, and so we have a clinician that's we're doing a trial on a trial basis. We have a clinician that's riding alongside of uniformed police officers, and so once the scene is made safe, a clinician can go and add their expertise. And again, it's not the clinician is not to take over our calls. It's just a tool that we're using because let's face it, we are not as experts in mental health. Law enforcement, we're not experts. So if we can have experts who know a lot more about that field than we do, I think it can only make us better. And so that's what we're doing now, in hopes, at least in Malden, in hopes to add a full-time position, mental health professional to our department.
That's outstanding. And this person's going to be available outside of banker's hours?
Yeah. So obviously those are some things that there's some decisions that have to be made from folks that are above my pay grade. But that's what we'd like to see. And we have that now. There are hotlines that you can call, and for mental health organizations, certain mental health organizations, and they'll come out and assist if they have someone available, or they can do other things in regards to issuing Section 12s or working on Section 35s for some of the folks that we're seeing in need of mental health services and substance abuse services.
And really quick, in plain English, Section 12s and Section 35, since you brought them up? Yeah,
that's just something, essentially, a police officer, a clinician, a doctor can issue for lack of a better term, a paper warrant to say, hey, listen, this person needs to go into custody, not police custody, but to the hospital. They need to go to the hospital, and it's like a 72-hour. They can be kept on a Section 12 for
72 hours. Yeah,
72 hours, and Section 35 is a whole different thing. That's you have to petition in front of a judge, and he or she will make the determination of whether this person is a harm to his or herself or the general public.
Right, and I believe the 35s are generally substance-based, yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, there you have it. We're coming down to it. We got 2 minutes left. This has been another great conversation. This is one that needs to be shared. It needs to be talked about. We're hoping that this discussion we had tonight leads to more discussions, because at the end of the day, if we're not communicating with one another, if we're not trying to hear each other and seek to understand one another, then we can never meet in the middle, like Obed said earlier in the show. So please, if you like these conversations, please subscribe to us, like us on Facebook, LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. We're on all your favorite podcast channels, and help spread the words, because people need to be part of these conversations, because it is so, so important that we try to do everything we can to get back together. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking your time out to come out here and share some of your wisdom with us.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, like I said, it's been a pleasure. Folks, we'll see you next week with another great episode. And as always, #supply the why. Good night, everybody.